So today I'm going to talk about what I call a relational consultation. Now this is similar concepts that you might have heard from my other video called a relational intake session. Stop doing intake sessions, but do a relational form of an information gathering. So this is what I call a relational consultation. And there's three key elements, which I'm going to outline for you in this video. So stay tuned for that coming right up. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Insight Online Supervision Lab, a space for you to learn, reflect, and sharpen your therapeutic skills. Here, we're going to focus on helping therapists work deeper with clients, moving beyond the surface symptoms to uncover and process the deep core attachment wounds, predictions, and patterns. Using a neuropsychoanalytic, psychodynamic, relational attachment framework, my goal is to help you bring unconscious patterns, feelings, and behaviors into your client's awareness so that real change can take place. I think overall, what I want the client to walk away with is a sense of what will therapy with Kate feel like, right? So if I spend a lot of the time talking about how I work and the types of modalities and the this and the that, they're going to have a sense about who I am as a clinician, but not how it feels to be with me. So I want to be with the client in this consultation. And remember, it's a consultation, so we don't have to do a deep dive, and I would limit your amount of deepening questions with clients in the consultation. But I think what we really want to start out with is our first concept for this relational consultation. Relational consult. What does that look like and what is it? So the first part, number one, is the relational part. So what does that mean? What does relational mean? What it means is I want to have the client feel the relationship with me. But whether or not you are virtual or in person, the first thing we want to focus on is the relationship. And if we can start the relationship off at the consultation, they're more likely to book back with us, and they're more likely to then feel comfortable at the first session when we again take a relational perspective. So this relational aspect, really, how do we do that? I work completely virtually. So when somebody comes online, I say, "Hi, Brenda. Nice to meet you. Really nice to meet you. How are you doing just showing up here for this consultation to talk to a stranger?" So my first question is a relational one. How are you feeling just about showing up today with a stranger, right? With maybe this expectation that you're supposed to share all of these details about who you are, right? I check in on their nervous system. How are you feeling in your body just showing up here? So they get a sense already of what it's going to be like to do therapy with me. So I want to look at how are they? And I may want to link it to their body right away. A body connection. It can be pretty nerve-wracking showing up at a consultation to maybe share some of your personal details with a stranger. How are you feeling just showing up here with me? And I want to relay to you that you're only going to share today whatever you're comfortable with, right? And so that's the beginning of my relational work, right? The second thing that I do after I welcome them, the second thing I want to do is an agenda. So what I say is so Brenda, first of all, thanks so much for booking. And also I know it's pretty hard to come to talk to a stranger, even just for a few minutes to share a little bit of your story. But what I thought we would do is maybe create an agenda, if that's okay with you. I thought maybe that we could start talking a little bit about, number one, what's bringing you to therapy now at this point in your life. I'm wondering if we can talk a little bit about what's bringing you in today. What are some of the things that you're looking for support with? The second thing is I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I might work with some of the issues that you might have to deal with. So how I work. And then finally, leave a few minutes for Q&A. And sometimes what I'll do also is I'll do my relational check-in with them. And then I'll say, I'm wondering if it might be helpful to create an agenda today where we can maybe spend 5 minutes with you sharing a little bit about what brings you in today, Brenda. and we can talk about 5 minutes about how I might work with that situation. And then we've got time for a Q&A in our 20 minutes. So I usually will start out by saying, we've got about 20 minutes, and I'm wondering if we can start out with what's bringing you in. I can talk about how I might work with what you're bringing and the Q&A. So I think the other really important thing is part 3. So this is part 1. Part 2 is we're setting an agenda. Part 3 is the me part, the therapist part. This is not about my skills. This is not about my general CBT, my general this, my general that. This is very specific about how I might work with what the client just shared. So I'm going to walk you through an example of that, right? So our first one is to get relational. Our second one is to do the agenda. But when we're doing this third part, we really want to have the client walk away with a feeling of this is what the treatment plan might look like, at least conditionally, right? And I'll take you through that. The other thing is that when we do this relational part, how are you? Where are you feeling it in your body? Take a deep breath for us to get started. And when we start, we do the agenda. And then what I do is I say, Brenda, tell me a little bit about, out of all the time and space you've had over the last period of time, what is it that made you pick up the phone now and say, oh, I need to go to therapy? What I really want to hear is their story. When I'm looking at number 3, it's really I'm listening for how I might work with this client. This is the treatment plan. That's what I'm listening for in 3. And then I want to hear their story. 3 is really about, number 1, we've got the relational, but the relational comes in to the story part. We're starting with the relational. We're going to create an agenda, so that's going to keep us on time. The client's going to be aware. And then I don't feel so bad about interrupting and saying, Brenda, I think this is really important. I think what's going on with your mom and your partner and your kids, it sounds to me like you have a lot on your plate. And sometimes I'll start that where I'll have to interrupt. They're telling us their story, and I'm going to have to say, Brenda, I'm really sorry to interrupt, but I just want to slow this down a little bit because I think you said some really important things, and I want to make sure I got that. My interruption is what I call an interruption sandwich. I start out with, I'm really sorry to interrupt, and I want to slow you down a little bit because I think you said something really important. I'm starting out with empathy, and then I'm interjecting with the sandwich. We've got the empathy, and then we've got the what I need to say, which is I need to interrupt you, and then a gentle sort of outtake. We've got this, how do I interrupt in a polite way? I'll put a profile up and an example of an interruption sandwich where we've got the bread and the bread, which is the positive and the empathic, and in the middle is what you're really trying to say, which is we have to stop now in a polite way. So we're bringing the relational elements into the story that they're telling. So they're going to tell us their story, a little bit about what's going on for them. And I'm going to be using my key skills here. The emphasis of this consultation is the therapeutic relationship. So I'm going to mirror. I'm going to paraphrase. I'm going to be sure that they know I'm listening and that they feel heard. That is the main goal of my consultation. The main goal may not be, yes, I'm going to hear the story, right? Yes, I want to hear why they're coming. But my main goal is for them to see that I'm hearing them, that I'm taking in what they're saying, that I'm listening, that I'm there, and I'm validating. So there's a lot of elements to a general session that are showing up in the consultation. And that's what I want to encourage. It's not a full session. We don't have to get a deep dive into all of the details. So the one thing that I want to do in this consultation is really focus on the mirroring, the paraphrasing. My main goal is to have them leave with the therapeutic element that they might have felt a little bit of relief because someone heard them. That's the goal. The goal is not for me to tell them all about my skills and how I might be the best therapist for them. They're going to leave with a feeling of how I supported them emotionally and how they might have gotten some physical relief and some stress relief just from sitting with me sharing. So that's my main goal in this relational consultation. The other thing is we might want to not let them go too deep of a dive. So their story is really important, but we want to be really careful because That story can turn into a big trauma dump in a consultation. So how do we avoid that? So I think we're starting to avoid it proactively by saying, at the beginning, we have an agenda. We've got about 5 minutes, Brenda, to hear about maybe what's bringing you in. So we're hoping that we've cracked that code with the consultation agenda. But if we haven't and they go into a trauma dump, what we want to say is we want to interrupt. And we say, Brenda, I'm sorry to interrupt. I want to slow you down a little bit because I think you said some important things and I think there's some painful things that are happening there. One of my concerns is that we're limited in time today for me to actually help support you if that's going to open a painful box for you today. And what I want to do is hope that we can put a pin in some of the details of the trauma and we can save those for our next session. So we interrupt with the how you're doing. I noticed that there's a lot of trauma that you're sharing with me. And I want to check in on where are you feeling in your body? How are you doing? I want you to take a deep breath, right? And I slowed us down a little bit, Brenda, because I think you're saying some important things. And I think there's a lot that's coming out. You've got this issue with your mom and your partner and this past trauma. There's a lot of pain. I'm hearing a lot of pain. And in our time today with our consultation, I want to give that pain the credit and time it deserves. And so that's why I'm hoping we can put a pin on that and I can check in on you to see how are you doing? Take a big, deep breath. Brenda, thank you for sharing with me some of that pain because that's helping me understand perhaps where we need to start. I have a good idea. There's a lot more to learn about you, Brenda, but I have the gist of where this trauma might be something that you want to focus in on and see where that's coming up. Would that be okay if we put a pin in that for today? Because I think what might be important in the time we have left is for me to share how I might work with your trauma. Would that be okay with you? I'll share a little bit about how we might go forward in our first few sessions. This is me giving her a bit of a treatment plan, right? Brenda, this story sounds, obviously there's a lot of elements to it and it's very complex. I would want to take our first few sessions, first 2, 3, 4 sessions really to get to know you, what caused you to pick up the phone now, and maybe how some of the past trauma might be playing into your life today. But I would want to do that on a really slow, titrated basis because it can be pretty overwhelming. And I'm going to want to check in on you pretty regularly in our sessions to see how you're doing. What's your nervous system doing? When you're telling this story, is your heart racing? Are you increasing your respiration? So I'm someone who works really quite somatically. And so I would want to hear that story, but I'd be listening in and checking in quite regularly on how are you doing. Our first few sessions really are and for you to get comfortable and you and I to get comfortable with each other as you share some of this really tough stuff. That's a little bit how, taking us out of the way of the script now, so that's a little bit how I might interrupt someone in terms of trying to have them not go into a deep dive, trying to keep it up here in a framework that we can not dysregulate the client. But my main goal is whatever story they're telling, I want to be able to do the relational mirroring, empathy, and really emphasize that with the client. That sounds like you've got an enormous amount on your plate, Brenda. I'm really glad that you're able to share that with me today. How is it for you just having shared all of that with me? How are you feeling as we think about finishing up our consultation? How are you doing? How are you going to take care of yourself tonight? So I add in the how are you going to take care of yourself? What's if it's something like this type of a case? But I really want to bring that relational agenda in. And I'm also sharing that treatment plan. So somebody might come in and say, I've got a lot of anxiety. And I might say, we're in the consult, I might say, yeah, tell me more about that. Tell me more about your anxiety. So they might share a little bit about it. And so what I might say to them in terms of listening for a treatment plan, so I'm doing all of this. I'm doing all the mirroring. I'm doing all of this, 5 minutes, 6 minutes listening to the story. And then I might say, Brendan, how I might work with your anxiety is first of all, to find out the who, the when, the why, and the where it shows up. So our first step would be for us to observe and find out where is the anxiety coming up in your life and where are the specific areas that it's coming up. So I might really want to do that. I might also want to really work on some nervous system regulation early on even in our first session. Do some scaling around what's on a scale of 1 to 10. What does your worst day with anxiety look like? So we might do that early on because I'd want to maybe have you get a little bit of relief from the anxiety and maybe have some coping skills to help you with that. But as we go forward in the therapy, I would really want to understand that and I don't know how this fits for you, but how I see anxiety is it's an alarm bell. It's an alarm bell that's going off. And the alarm bell is really telling us that something in the rest of our world, our interpersonal life, our interpersonal relationships, is not right. So the anxiety can act as a symptom, as an alarm that our body is feeling the anxiety and the pressure of other things in our life. It could be work stress, interpersonal relationships, romantic relationships. So I would want to find out what's underneath that. There could be a lot of issues underneath the anxiety, but the anxiety could be the thing that's presenting and giving you what seems like the biggest problem. And so I want to help you with your anxiety, but also understand what are some of the core causes. And I work from an attachment framework, and I work from this way and that way. So I might say that, I might share how I work, but I might say, I might want to look at really who are some of the people that add to your anxiety. I might want to focus in on those relational anxiety pieces. And so that's how I might work. And I'm not sure if that feels like it fits for you, Brandon, but I'm happy you were able to join today. Do you have any questions? And thank you for sharing. I might say, thank you so much for sharing about your anxiety. How has it been to share that here with me? We just chatted a little bit about it, but I really am grateful that you're able to open up to a bit of a stranger, right? I'm a stranger, obviously. It's not always easy to open up, but how are you feeling as you leave the session today? And then I carry on with, I think it's really important for you to interview a number of therapists to see who feels like a good fit for you. I would really enjoy working with you, Brandon. I've worked with anxiety before. Do you have any questions for me before we end today? And our next steps would be, I want you to take some time and think about it and whether you think we were a good fit. We can also make an appointment if you feel comfortable, but again, there's no pressure to do that today. You can take it away and think about it. So those are some of the basics of how I do this relational consult. I hope that it's helpful for you to just give you some time and space to really focus in on the therapeutic relationship from the very beginning, because that's what's going to keep the client wanting to come back to see you. It's not that you're great at DBT. It's not that you're great at psychodynamic. You can share some of those skills with them, but they're going to come back because they felt that you heard them. That's the main thing that they will walk away from and decide whether they're going to work with you or not. All right, so thanks so much. We'll look forward to chatting with you again, but please go see our other video on doing a relational intake, which is also called Stop Doing Intake Sessions. All right, take care. Bye-bye.